Hey, what's up everyone? This is Music Tech Help Guy, and I've got another music theory video for you here today. We're going to be using Logic Pro's chord track and session players, and I'm going to give you some of like the basic knowledge you need to start writing chord progressions. And I also just want to sort of dispel the myth that you have to go to music school or you have to study music theory to start writing music. And that's coming from someone who has not one but two degrees in music. The fundamentals of writing chords is actually quite simple. You just have to memorize certain patterns and understand the sort of relative nature of major and minor keys, and you have to be able to say your alphabet up to G. So let's get right into this. Let's jump into Logic. Okay, so I'm not going to sit here and debate like whether session players are a good thing or a bad thing. Some people love them, some people hate them. I find them particularly helpful as a composing tool and an arrangement tool to get ideas in quick, and then I'll go back in and I'll tweak the ideas in the session player to my liking, or I may, completely remove them and insert my own recording. So I look at them as a tool that we can use to get to a final result quicker, and they're also, along with the chord track, an incredibly helpful educational tool, and hopefully I will convince you of that in this video. So let's start by creating a session keyboard player track. And it doesn't really matter what preset you use. I'm just going to use the stock Freely preset. It's going to throw up a chord progression here for us by default. And also by default, most Logic projects I think are in C major. So we'll just start there as well. I'm going to pop out my project notepad because there are some things that we need to recognize and some sort of patterns we need to recognize. Now, generally speaking, when you're building a chord progression or composing any song, you need to decide whether the song is going to be in a major key or a minor key. If you take the simplest major scale, you're going to get C major, and C major has no sharps or flats, meaning it's all white keys on the keyboard. Now, this doesn't mean that if you write something in C major that you can't transpose it, and that's exactly what we're going to do in this video. We're actually going to write something in A minor and transpose it to a different key, but the approach is exactly the same in major keys. The other thing to remember is that the chords that you can use, what are called diatonic chords, so chords that are within the key, the chords you can use are derived from the scale. So the C major scale is just C, D, E, F, G, A, B. And likewise, there's another scale, that the minor scale, and the simplest minor scale is A minor. So there's no sharps, no flats. It's all white keys on the keyboard. So this will be our other sort of reference scale. And the A minor scale is also very simple: A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And then, of course, there's you can repeat the main note. So in A minor, the first note is A. That's called the tonic note. So I'm going to repeat that note up here. And the same thing goes for C major. We can add an extra tonic that's up an octave. It's the same note, but one sort of register higher. So that's what I was saying. You don't have to know a bunch of complex theory. Now, this next step takes a little bit of memorization, but if you learn it in C major, you'll be able to sort of take this same knowledge and apply it to A minor. What you'll notice here is that A minor and C major contain all of the same notes. They're just in a different order. In C major, your first chord, your tonic chord, is going to be C major. And the way you denote C major is just C. You don't have to put the word or a symbol for major after it. The second chord is D minor. So you put a little M next to it. The third chord is E minor. So you're going to put a little M next to it. The fourth chord is F major, so you just leave it F. The fifth chord is G, G major. The sixth chord is A minor, so we put a little M next to it. The seventh chord is a diminished chord, so I'm going to put D-I-M next to it, and then we end on the tonic chord again on C. Right here, we're dealing with what are called triads. These are 3-note chords, and it's not so important that you know each of the individual notes right now, like C major is C, E, G, D minor is D, F, A, E minor is E, G, B. Sure, you can go learn all of that, and I do recommend you do, but for this video, all you need to know are the chord names. Remember how I said earlier that these two keys are sort of relatable. They're relative to each other. They're the same notes, just in a different order. The same thing goes for the chords. So up here, the A chord is A minor, so we start on A minor. The B chord is diminished, so this is B diminished, and so forth and so on. C is major, D is minor, E is minor, F is major, G is major, and then A is minor again. And again, in A minor, the A minor chord is the tonic chord. So what we have here are all 7 diatonic chords in C major and A minor. If you can memorize this, this will take you a long way. You'll get a lot of use just out of this. One of the things that I want to talk about real quick before we start getting into the chord track is that these are called relative keys, meaning that all of the chords and the scales as well are identical. You're just starting on a different tonic. You're denoting a different chord or note as the tonic note or chord. So again, in A minor is the tonic chord and A is the tonic note. That's sort of like the fundamental for that key. You'll always find yourself kind of going back to the tonic unless you're intentionally trying to, go away from the tonic. Same thing goes for C major. The whole process I'm going to show you right now is exactly the same for C major and A minor, but I'm going to go with A minor because there's one little special thing you can do in A minor. First things first, let's change our key to A minor. I'll change it back. I already had it in A minor. And right now, the session player is just going to play and, it's going to comp around on A minor. So it's all one chord, right? Chords don't have to be one chord per bar. Likewise, you can have more than one chord per bar. I'm just going to do one chord per bar just as an example here. So let's go set the playhead here. Let's open our chord track. Again, if you've never used the chord track before, you can just press G to open up your global tracks and then right click or control click in here and make sure that the chord track is shown, and then click the plus button to create your first chord. For our first chord, let's do A minor, and then you're going to hit the tab key and that'll jump you over to the next bar. And the next step is to start building your chord progression. There are a lot of different techniques to know which chord to go to, which chord combinations sound the best. I'm going to throw this out here and just say, for the purposes of this video being a super beginner tutorial, I would say just experiment with different chord combinations and see what you come up with. You'll find certain patterns that you like more than others, and that's exactly how I started to learn how to compose at the piano when I was a kid. Like, I had no clue what chords I was playing. I was just moving my hand up and down and finding different combinations that I thought sounded good to my ear. What I would recommend not doing is don't just go up the scale or down the scale. That's going to sound really boring. I would try to change it up a little bit and use some stepwise motion, but also some leaps. So a leap would be like going from A minor up to C or A minor up to D minor. A step would be like going from C to D minor. So if you do use a step, try not to use too many of them in sequence, like no more than like 2 or maybe 3, but typically I'm trying to use some combination of steps and leaps. So maybe we'll go from A minor, and just double click to enter in a new chord there after the chord window's closed out there. So let's go A minor, let's go D minor, hit tab, let's go to C, then let's go to F, oh, that was G. In fact, let's go to G and then let's go to C, and then we'll go to D. No, we'll go to F, and then we'll go G, we'll go D minor, and then E minor. We've created a chord progression without looking at a staff, without looking at a keyboard, just understanding what the chord qualities are in A minor. So let's see what that sounds like. Now, one thing I'll tell you about that is kind of an important thing to remember here is that if you use the 5th chord, what's called the 5 chord, this has what's called a dominant tonic relationship. The 5th note of a scale or the fifth chord of any key can be called the dominant chord. Just know that the fifth chord has a pretty good pull back to the one chord. So if you're trying to make a chord progression loopable like this, it helps to end on the 5 chord. And there's one other trick I'm going to show you with the 5 chord in just a moment. That pull is going to be even stronger in major keys, going from G down to C. But in minor keys, you can also go from G up to A minor. You could try D minor up to down to A minor. Those are typically the chord combinations that are going to make the end of your chord progression sound more resolute and sort of have it loop back to the original tonic chord. Let's go ahead and just add the diminished triad. So we're using all of the chords here. I think I'm using all of them. Okay, so let's change up this G chord to B diminished. You can just type in B DIM. Let's see what that sounds like. The diminished chord's going to give you a lot more tension than the other chords are going to give you. I'm just going to go back to G. I think I like the G better there, but just wanted to throw that in there so you can hear it. Now, if you're working in a major key, the process is exactly the same. Just experiment with your 7 diatonic triads, your 7 diatonic chords, find patterns that you like. But what you can do if you want to sort of juice this up even a little bit more is you can venture into the world of 7th chords. Now, 7th chords are essentially like taking a triad, a 3-note chord, for example, C, E, G, C major, and adding another note to the top. So it's a 4th note, and that's what creates the 7th. That interval between the bottom note of the chord and that 4th note is called a 7th. If you just arbitrarily add a 4th note to the top of a C major chord, you're not necessarily going to get a 7th chord. There are certain 7th chords that work diatonically within the key. And again, remember that word diatonic means essentially within the key. It fits within the scale. And if you can memorize your order of diatonic 7ths, this can help you to juice up your chord progressions even more. So just so you know, in major key land, your C chord can also be a C major 7 chord, and that's C MAJ 7. D minor can be D minor 7. E minor can be E minor 7. F is F major 7. G is going to be G7, and this is what's called a major minor 7th chord or a dominant 7th chord. Remember that word from earlier. The 5 chord is the dominant, so we get a dominant 7th chord. So this is just G7, not G major 7. It's a little bit different than the major 7ths. And then we have A minor 7, B diminished 7, and then we're back to C major 7. You can use other 7th chords, other types of 7th chords, but if you use any other 7th chord besides the ones I'm showing you here, you are using a 7th chord that is out of the key. You're using some other extended harmony. These are diatonic 7ths that fit within the key. And just like we were talking about earlier about C major and A minor being relative keys, the 7th chords are relative too. So all of the 7th chords are going to be exactly the same. A minor is A minor 7. B diminished is going to be B diminished 7. C is going to be C major 7. D is going to be D minor 7. E is going to be E minor 7. F is going to be F major 7. G is going to be G7. And then we're back to A minor 7 again. So all of the same chords, all of the same notes between C major and A minor. We're just starting on a different tonic. We're denoting the tonic as a different note for each of these keys. The other thing about 7th chords is I don't want you to think that you have to use everything as a 7th chord. You can just kind of pepper them in here and there if you want. But let's go through and try to substitute some 7th chords in here. So let's go A minor 7. Let's do D minor 7. Let's keep the G here, just a triad. We'll do C major 7, F major. Let's keep the F just a triad. G, let's make this a G7, a D minor 7, E minor 7, and then let's go ahead and end on an A minor here at the end, just so we can have like a resolving chord, although it can be just looped. So let's give this a listen with a few more juicy 7ths in there. Again, the same thing applies to major keys. You can just go through and experiment with certain chords being sevenths and others just being triads. Now, I told you there was one little special thing with minor keys, and that is an alteration of the 5 chord, the 5th chord. So in this case, in A minor, it's E minor is our 5th chord, our 5 chord, or dominant chord. In order to make it dominant, though, it actually needs to be major. You'll notice that in the in C major, the dominant, the 5 chord, is a major triad and a dominant 7th. So we can actually alter the 5 chord in A minor to be E major or E7. So it gives you 2 more options to pick from there on the 5 chord. And I find, especially when you're going 5-1, you're going from the 5 chord to the tonic chord, I find that using an E or an E7 as opposed to an E minor or an E minor 7 really pulls that chord and resolves it back to the tonic. And that just has to do with the voicing of the chord and where all the notes are in relation to each other. So let's try this out again with an E7 here, resolving back to A minor. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and shorten. I'm going to go ahead and delete that, shorten it up, because we're going to add another chord progression here at 9. So let's go ahead and just trim that back. We'll just put this on a loop. So let's hear what this sounds like with the E7. And I also find that sometimes if you want a more resolute 5-1 motion, it helps for the 1 chord, the tonic, to not be a 7th chord. You get a little bit stronger resolution that way. So one of the things I've been saying a lot in my live streams when I react to other people's compositions is it seems like the song stays on the tonic for a long time. And what I mean by that is your chord progressions are always starting on the 1 chord. They're always starting on the tonic, and you never really move away from that. What I like to do is, like in a pre-chorus or a chorus or a bridge section, I like to sort of pivot away from the 1 chord, right? So what I might do here, instead of ending this on E7, I may end it on E minor 7. Let's go ahead and start it on A minor 7. But then what I might do here at 9 is I may pivot to a different chord. So for example, I might go to the 6th chord, which is F major 7, and then I could do G, and then maybe I'll do D minor, and then I'll do E minor 7, and then maybe I'll repeat that again, F major 7, G, D minor. Instead of going to E minor here, let's go to E7, and then that will set us up to get back to the tonic chord. So let's just create another session player region there. Let's see what this sounds like. And you know, I suppose I should play this over here so you can hear the transition from this progression into this other progression. And maybe I want to change up the style of the piano here too. I just click on the region there, go to the keyboard player, and let's not change the patch, but let's do like broken chords. Yeah, let's do that. We could maybe think about this first section here as like a verse. So I can add a marker here. We'll just call this verse. Let's tab over. Maybe we'll call this a pre-chorus. And then we want another chord progression over here for the chorus. And maybe this one can be more simple. Maybe this one can just be, you know, a 4-chord progression that's repeated. So we definitely want to go back to A minor because we have that E7 there. So let's just keep that A minor. And then we'll do C, then we'll do E minor 7, and then we'll do F major 7. And one little thing I want to show you here too is you don't have to make all your chords whole notes. If you, let me take that back a step. There we go. If you set your snap mode to like bar to a beat or division, when you go add a chord, like let's make this an F major 7. Now when I tab, it's going to tab by a beat. So I could maybe do like a half note, like 2 beats for F major 7 and then 2 beats for G. And then we go back to A minor again. So we could do things like that. You don't always have to make every single chord a whole note or a whole bar in length. I'll hold Option, duplicate that over. So maybe this is our chorus. Let's maybe bring down the intensity in the pre-chorus. Let's bring up the intensity in the chorus and kind of keep the complexity low and maybe make the voicing of the 2 hands a little more wide. So here would be our chorus coming out of the pre-chorus. Yeah, I changed up the complexity there a little bit. So now what I've got is a 3-section structure here that I can start building a song out of. And you know what? Here's what I'll do. Let's add in a session bass player too. Let's add session bass player. Let's pull him in there. We'll have him just play throughout. And then let's add a session drummer as well. Roots songwriter. Let's try that one. And let's just make this real low on the intensity side. And I do want to change up the drum pattern here. I think it's maybe a little too basic. And you could even try inserting additional chords. Like for example, maybe I just want like a 1-beat chord here. I can add that in and, you know, I could do like a G here. I could jump from A minor to G to C. Oops, forgot to hit return. There we go. Play around with it, experiment with it, you know, find something that suits, you know, the type of style, the type of genre you're going for, the type of vibe and mood you're going for. You know, chord progression writing, at least from a foundational level like this, doesn't need to be complex, you know? There's a lot more to learn, like voicing and extended harmonies and different patterns and secondary dominance and modulations and, you know, things like that. But, you know, at the core here, just like the fundamental chord writing with modern DAWs like Logic and the chord track and the session players, it doesn't have to be hard. But but I feel like I hear way too many songs that literally have like one chord or two chords, you know. Give it some variety, you know. Give it let the song expand a little bit. Let it move in some different directions harmonically. Now, I said this at the very beginning of the video that C major and A minor are the simplest two keys, the simplest major key and the simplest minor key, in that they are all white keys on the keyboard, no sharps or flats. However, let's say you start building out an arrangement like this and the vocalist you're working with can't sing in this key. It's a little too low or a little too high. The great thing about Logic is you can instantly transpose your entire chord track with just 2 clicks. So let's say that your vocalist is like, A minor's too low. I want to go up to C sharp minor. All you got to do is change the key at the top, hit transpose, and this will instantly transpose the entire chord track. And so now we're in a completely different key. We're now in C sharp minor. And then that could take you back into your second verse. So there you go. That is a sort of beginner's guide to just fundamental chord writing and building chord progressions using Logic Pro, along with its session players and chord track. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel to see more content like this. As always, thank you so much for the support, and thanks for watching.